GM, GM. How am I coming through? We got Speed Racer with us today. We got Harry, UTXO intern. Farmer Joe is off in farming land, but we're gonna keep it going. GM, Harry, how we doing, bro?
Good morning, Bundy.
Is
Just
there any
enjoying the
feedback
pump.
or
No, you're
enjoying the
good.
pump? Respect the pump. Hopefully everyone's respecting the pump. But Speed Racer, how we living?
Doing pretty good.
Nice. Well, what's been kind of on my radar this week is the inauguration next week. Is it priced in? It feels like the bottom is in, and we also have Ross being freed. So, I've been shitcoining a bit around those lanes. I got some free Ross token on Solana, some Silk Road token, some of these other things. So I think next week is going to be pretty interesting. What are your thoughts there, Speed Racer? I know you keep a pretty tight grasp on the market with some of these things.
Yeah, I think we're in the process of finding a bottom at this point. I think Bitcoin is showing some. I'm getting some reverberation here. I don't know. Is that me or is that
It's probably me. I have this new setup, so let me mute and then let me know if it happens again.
okay? But basically, we're fighting with the 50-day moving average. S&P 500 is kind of bottoming as well, and so risk asset markets are kind of just going through that final phase of recalibration for next year. If you think about what markets have done over the past couple years, they've been going up significantly. We're up over 50% in the last couple years when it comes to standard markets, and that's a lot. And so at the end of the year and beginning of next, a lot of these different portfolios have allocations that they can't exceed when it comes to various assets, and so they're basically having to sell the winners and they're buying losers with it. And Bitcoin was one of those major winners last year, is now IBIT, and a lot of these are part of these portfolios. So you're just having natural selling, not necessarily bearish selling, just natural selling to rebalance portfolios coming into the new year. And so that's kind of what we've seen. There's been some scares about the 10-year treasury and its impact on risk assets. And are people going to just buy bonds instead of risk assets? Again, all this stuff is just like short term movement. But in reality, everything's still very constructive when it comes to the market, in particular Bitcoin. So pretty bullish here in the intermediate term. Short term, there could be some more volatility tomorrow. CPI, which is inflation data, comes out for December, and then PCE at the end of the month. So I think we'll know a little bit more in some of these short term trends in the next few days. But I think we could see a lot of bullish catalysts for Bitcoin in particular, as a lot of the stuff that has been promised could be implemented via by Trump next week when it comes to just signing some executive orders. So I think if we start seeing some of that getting implemented, I think we could really see our next leg higher when it comes to Bitcoin price action.
Yeah, I mean, we dropped to little under 90K and that was quickly gobbled up. And you mentioned like, dude, Trump gets into office next week. And this isn't our first rodeo with this guy. Like this guy, when he gets behind something, he repeats himself over and over and over. That's like something that he's just known for. Is like if he gets on one of these kicks and it aligns with an uptick in the market, he's going to feel himself and be like, "Yeah, I did this," and just keep talking about it. So like, if the sentiment goes bullish, I think we see like a parabolic bullish upswing, just because the nature of this guy's ego and just the way that he kinda his cadence when he speaks, like, I know it's kind of a stretch, but, like, that's kinda my thinking is, like, if this guy
No,
gets on it.
he's one of the only
Yeah,
presidents who ever, during things he comments about the S&P 500 price action. He comments about the stock market, and he also is going to comment about Bitcoin. He's saying he's the Bitcoin president. Why would he not then want to prove that
exactly.
with price action? And so it's one of those situations and metrics that he measures, because as a business person, that's what you look at. You look at your earnings, you look at all these things, and so he's trying to look at distinct measures that he can measure his success in, and those are very distinct ones. And so you have inflation, you have tax rates, you also have people's wealth increasing, and I think that's what he's promised, and so he's going to try to deliver that. And crypto's on the docket this cycle, and if you think about the largest funding for this cycle, it was crypto. What's going to be the largest funding for these politicians next cycle? I guarantee you it'll be crypto again. So if you don't scratch their back, just like the pharmaceutical industry all those years, someone's going to not get reelected. And people like to get reelected in this country.
Damn, yeah, no, it's I'm getting, like, a little bit antsy towards it because it's like it's either very parabolic upswing or if it goes sideways for a while, that's when maybe I get a little bit nervous of, like, when it can. But, if there is the recipe for a true bull to kind of get that euphoria and a lot of these green candles, I think it's gonna be within this next few weeks, personally. But again, I don't have no one has a crystal ball. Some people have better thesis than that, but I want to also jump over to Harry. Harry's been working on a cool new token standard, or I'll let you explain it. But Matt and the Arch team have mentioned that you and the Ordinals wallet. We got Elon Moist, the CEO himself, in the spot. But yeah, if you want to kind of just like catch us up what you're working on over there, and I'd love to understand it more too.
Yeah, totally. Well, first off, I just want to say, do you think we're gonna get Ross Ulbricht on the Bitcoin builders,
Oh yeah. Dude, he
stage in the
already
next week
he
or two?
already like yeah, we got a cell phone in and he texted me. Don't ask how we got it in. The dude's walking a little funny, but he's got a phone and he texted me and he said he's going to be on, next Thursday. He's got a bunch of drugs for us, so it's going to be a different type of show, but it's going to be cool.
That's good to hear. So
It's been
yeah,
a
we've
while since I
been
hit that soundboard.
soundboard's good. Yeah, looking forward to Ross being free. But yeah, we've been experimenting with Arch Network and recently been messing around with their APL standard. So it's very similar to the SPL code on Solana, but it's going to be, for Arch Network. So
Cool.
I've
And
been
then just
building out,
SPL, just for the
yeah.
listener, SPL's like ERC20. Like, how would you break down the SPL token
Yeah,
standard
so every
and stress it?
token on Solana is an SPL token. The difference between like Solana and Ethereum is like on Ethereum with ERC20, every token implements the same like interface, but they could have different code inside of it, like which causes problems like, drainers or like you've seen those infinite staircase charts with some Ethereum tokens. There's a bunch of like traps. So Solana, they all use the same code for all the tokens on Solana, and then you can, you know, build interoperability on top of that. So you don't have to like worry about like drainer contracts and stuff like this. And Runes also did a similar thing. That was something Casey spoke a lot about. Runes all adhere to the same code and the same rules. There's no, no difference between them all. So APL is just the Arch, version of the SPL token. So you can, create them and use them. And if you've ever programmed with SPL tokens, it's a very similar kind of concept, in addition to the, some of the Bitcoin concepts.
Oh, dope. All right. So you're helping with the APL standard. Like, break down exactly what the contribution is. So, yo, can you hear me or no? Can anyone else hear me?
I can
Randy.
hear you. I can hear you,
Yep,
Bungie.
we got you.
All right. All right. Harry, you might need to do a lap.
I'll
Too
drop
much
down and come back.
alpha. Too much alpha. No. But Randy, CEO Elon Moit, that you guys are working with Harry on this effort. I'm pretty damn sure because you guys roll together and always building cool stuff. So yeah, I want to hear your guys' thoughts and just kind of like your guys' thoughts on Arch, kind of interacting with it and what's cracking with this token protocol.
Yeah, so I guess the just to start with the general like thesis and objective here is the story's the same with BTC. BTC to do trades to farm BTC, the cost is too high. So it slows it down in sort of this metaphysical way. You see it right now with runes and BRC20. Things don't really move well with the market because of it's all mucked up. And Arch solves that problem. It allows for us to speed things up, to make things a little bit more seamless, to make things cost less, et cetera. So we're basically looking at this, and Harrison is working closely with the Arch team specifically on making sure this APL standard is, works A, but B is sort of as developer friendly as possible. So that's kind of like underneath the hood. And then what the next steps will be as we chip away to that is actually making interface to be able to create a token, see a token, manage a token, mint, etc. So this sort of the same game plan that you see in any other blockchain in its early stages. We're really trying to be the first and foremost there just to get that into people's hands. So starting with testnet or whatever that may be. But the idea is having a good standard, something that's really developer friendly. So you're winning on that side. Anybody who's worked with Ethereum or Solana can easily come over and try this out and basically interact with Bitcoin, indirectly through Arch. So that's a very good, marketing front for Arch itself. And then on our side, we can take business models that we've built and apply them through Arch and see, and the users are going to be able to see how things can really move. Unfortunately, BTC itself can't do this, so Arch is the solution to that. So we've got early prototype and early design and iteration on just being able to like basically come to a web app, have a wallet, see a token, be minted and transferred and things like that. So we're really early, but we're feeling more comfortable now that the stuff under the hood is moving along. And Harry's been able to make some great progress on that, even in just like the last week or so. Harrison's becoming the expert of Arch. That's really the CTO of Arch would be the ideal scenario, and then we can start to build product on it, share the narrative. Not really create the narrative. The narrative's already there, but for us to get some momentum behind that narrative, show people that this actually solves a problem. Our main goal as a team is to work on things that add value. So things that have real problem solution sets and things that can really like speed stuff up, et cetera. You got everybody pretty much knows our background, but if you don't, we've worked on Bitcoin forks, BSV, VCH. We worked on ETH. We worked on Solana. Our goal is to generalize across these ecosystems, understand what makes them valuable, the features, the good things about them, and then really highlight them. And we've been really successful for that. So we're going through our Arch phase right now and starting to ramp up a little bit and get to a point where there'll be a product that we can actually give to other people here relatively soon.
So
Given.
just a question on that then.
Go ahead.
So the token standard won't be technically native on Bitcoin, but it'll sit on top of Arch, and it's its own token standard, not necessarily Rune, not BRC20. It's kind of a token standard that can be used within the framework of Arch itself and the protocols built on top of it.
Correct. And Harrison can highlight that. Harrison, like I said, he's going to be the expert of this. That's really what we're going for here. And Harrison, why don't you highlight I know you said something already, but just re-highlight like what's an APL and why is an APL good? Because I don't think you touched on that. Why is it good?
So the main thing is you can transfer and trade them incredibly cheap. You don't have to pay a Bitcoin transaction fee to, use them is the main goal. Now you do have to pay Bitcoin transactions fees to like create them and create your token account. But once you're set up on APL for a specific token, you no longer have to continue to pay Bitcoin transaction fees. So you're going to be able to swap them like way faster, which is like a crucial thing. And then they're going to be interoperable between, other Arch programs.
So they're settled via a contract, not necessarily the blockchain.
Yeah, so they're settled on the Arch, proof of stake network, not necessarily the Bitcoin blockchain, although they are rooted in Bitcoin UTXOs. Like each token account is a Bitcoin UTXO, so there is some crossover.
No, this is dope because Harry, you are uniquely positioned with all your experience from early UTXO experimentation with Twetch and projects in the BSV realm, which kind of catapulted you guys to be able to release a working product right out of the jump when everyone was trying to rush towards building stuff. You guys not only had something, but it was functional and brought value that no one else could really get a wallet, interact with these UTXOs as efficiently. So you have that background. But then you also did some projects on Solana that, you were sharing with me that I thought were really clever, like the tweet pumped out fun approach. So you have that experience. So it seems like the writing's on the wall, like the tech stack makes sense to you is effectively like what I'm hearing, correct? Yeah. Like
Yeah,
it,
absolutely. And
yeah,
and
that's bold.
there's definitely multiple approaches to building on Arch. Like Saturn has done a lot with runes and building an AMM there. And
Mhm.
the thing about theirs is they settle to the chain quite often. It doesn't block you as a user. You can still move fast, but you're still paying this transaction fee to settle to Bitcoin. And my approach is, well, actually, I think users will not want to settle very often. They'll want to play their token games, do it really fast, make their money, and then eventually they will settle back to BTC. And you could wrap, Bitcoin as an APL token, trade with it very fast, get BTC, and then later on, when you're done playing your game, you could like withdraw your BTC back to your main wallet. So this is kind of how I envision this DeFi on Bitcoin working.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, it does sound like it ends up being a wrapped asset that you're not using the trust assumptions of Bitcoin, or how does that roll up?
Well, you're using the trust assumptions of Arch Network, which they have these threshold signatures using Frost. So you're basically, yeah, trusting the Arch validators,
Mhm.
but it's a whole proof of stake network that uses threshold signatures. So that's all just core Arch concepts. But then, yeah, we can add the programmability to wrap them into APLs that we could swap, for almost zero fees, like much more quickly. And whenever you want to leave, you can leave.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's the perfect situation, right? You get the high throughput. Like my thought has always been like, dude, Solana would be the perfect L2, but doesn't have the peripherals of UTXO management. And then like with this approach, from my understanding, it is a modified, proof of stake network, aka very similar to Solana. So having the high throughput of doing some of these more, like high through like trading a lot, it sounds like you'll stay there, and then when it comes time to settle, you can then resolve it back to it's almost like like coat check method to some degree of like
You it's very smart. I mean, because again, I think, if you think about Bitcoin and Bitcoin blockchain, if we're trying to say we want to grow this ecosystem and build and have builders come in for utility, what happens is ultimately it raises the fees every time someone's using it. So as adoption occurs, price would go up, which would then disincentivize use. And so I think doing something this way, building certain things where people could actually build applications or actual functional DeFi or whatever on Bitcoin, where it doesn't be a cycle where you continue to drive up prices, which then ultimately makes people not want to use it. And so I think some approach like this is pretty ingenious actually, because there's roles for each of these different parts. But if you're really wanting to bring in high utility on chain to layer one Bitcoin, you need something like this where it doesn't impact the fees significantly.
yeah. No, and Isabel, I want to welcome you up. Just actually watched the interview that you did with Arch. It was super good, and definitely you know how to ask questions way better than I do. So I just want to welcome you up. And what was your overall finding from it all? Because it seemed like, you were digging quite deep, and seems like from the conversation you have a pretty solid grasp on it now.
Well, I think that there's like a lot of confusion about, well, thank you. First of all, that's very, very sweet. And I totally disagree. You're also an awesome interview. So yeah, we're two peas in a pod. But I will say that I really had a lot of fun doing that interview. And I had like an aha moment that's like it's very clear to me that other people in the industry are having after having watched that, which is like ridiculous. I think a lot of people think that Arch is like an L2 that like only offers the sort of like kind of traditional sidechain custody model. There's like some fancy thing that happens,
Yeah,
in the
yeah. So
Bitcoin, and then
Isabel,
hopefully you can get it
so
back.
you're cutting in
Yeah.
and out a little
At
bit.
like the perfect time too.
Oh
I
my
know
Like
you're
right when
gosh.
about
you're
to,
about to drop
Okay,
the
wait.
bomb on us.
How about this?
but it
Is this
sounds
better?
clear. Yeah, it's like super clear, and then it just cuts
Yeah,
out.
you
So
sounded great, and then just dropped out.
Oh, okay. Well, hopefully this is better. I'm in a place with like pretty a
cool.
little interesting internet. But anyway, yeah, that was sort of I feel like for me like the big takeaway, the big technical takeaway that like the more feedback I get from the episode, even from people who are like really smart in the industry and who you'd like assume understand things, they didn't realize or didn't know this piece of art of Arch's architecture, which like really sets it apart and changes the custody model
Can you
Completely.
summarize what you had
I don't
just
know if
said?
I
Because
how
we
much I
we
cut out
missed a we
before,
missed
but
a good
like, did
chunk.
you everyone hear what I was saying about sort of how basically Arch is using validators to execute PSBTs rather than, or I mean, they can also do like a traditional sidechain model, right? Where you like send Bitcoin to a multisig and then there's like this L2 and then you get your stuff out of the multisig. But I think what's like the most interesting thing about Arch and like really kind of changes the game is really like the big unlock that we spent a lot of time focusing on in the episode was this idea of validators executing PSBTs so that like your Bitcoin doesn't even have to leave your wallet for you to, potentially have smart contracts on Bitcoin. You can actually theoretically, well, and practically have smart contracts on native Bitcoin without taking on custody risk. And that's like that to me was like a very, 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 that's like a huge deal, right? Like if the goal is trustless Bitcoin smart contracts, that's a big deal. That's like it, right? And I think a lot of people are missing that. I think a lot of people assume they I think a lot of people are confused that like they think like, oh, but like isn't it a multisig? Isn't it like a federated? Isn't it just like all the other L2s? No. Like, it can be that way. It can act that way if certain use cases demand of it. But if you're comfortable like dealing with like 10-minute block times and you want to execute smart contracts on layer one, that's also a possibility. And the way that that's done basically is you have Arch validators effectively publishing PSBTs, so executing PSBTs based on smart contract logic. But as we all know from ordinals, right? And it's like lovely to see how everything builds on everything else, technically and historically. PSBTs don't require custody, right? Like PSBTs don't require like a 2 of 2 multi-sig or whatever. So yeah, so that I think is like a really important thing for this episode is like understanding why this system can like actuate custodyless Bitcoin native smart contracts.
Yeah. No, Nick, saw you jump up.
Yeah, just wanted to chime in. First of all, Isabel, as a former journalist myself, a DC correspondent, great interview. Obviously, I love it because you featured us, but I think what was especially interesting to me is you really brought out the best of Matt and me in explaining, these technical concepts. And I found it helped me, even though I wrote the white paper and I've still been working on this for, 6 to 8 months now. So really great interview. Anyone who hasn't seen it already, definitely check it out. Definitely, add to the readership there and the viewership. And I guess I want to add to that because Isabel really nailed on the head with this whole, you know, unlike these L2s, there are options if you want to, settle on Bitcoin. But I think in addition to that, from a user experience, right, because it's done through PSBTs, because you don't lose your Bitcoin at any point, and because of the fact that there are a lot of things that most people want to do that can be done completely trustlessly, you don't even have to necessarily care about Bitcoin transaction times, because the worst case scenario that happens if you're someone who just wants to trade runes quickly and effectively is that the transaction doesn't go through. So you're never going to lose assets on it, right? You might miss out on a small opportunity if for some reason there's a rollback or things like that. But, there are two different things that Isabel was talking about there, and I want to delineate that. From a builder perspective, if you want to just build on Bitcoin transaction speeds and, do that using this validator network with more complex smart contracts, you can, or you can create stuff that's more like Arch native and lots of transactions. A little bit what Elon Moise was speaking about, right? With this ability to do most of it and then wait later to anchor or to drop it off on Bitcoin, so to speak. But from a user experience, it's not really. I mean, most of the time you don't have to choose. The only time you have to choose is if you want to do some of this stuff like staking, becoming, earning more yield on your Bitcoin, lending protocols, which, if you do a lending protocol, you have to trust them to, give you back your asset anyway, right? And so that's really the question. If you want to trade on all this, it's going to actually allow everyone, whether or not, if even if they don't want to take on any trust assumptions outside Bitcoin, it will still allow them to have a faster user experience and actual DeFi on Bitcoin. And I think that's what's really exciting here.
Well, it just expands what can be done on Bitcoin, and I think that's the important thing is just trying to gain adoption and get builders over here. I mean, I posted at the top. I think you guys posted this here today, but I mean, just look at the stuff that's just starting going to be rolling out here very soon, and building on Arch, and it just seems like every day there's more and more seeing some of those benefits. So it'll be exciting here over the coming weeks and months as this stuff starts to grow, and there's just a lot of smart people working on within the framework of Bitcoin what can be done, and there's just more and more stuff every day that we said 6 months ago wasn't possible is now starting to be implemented on Bitcoin.
Speed, given that your name is Speed Racer, I wanted to ask you about this. And maybe, since you know DeFi so well, you can explain it to some folks who maybe aren't as familiar with other ecosystems. But, speed really is the name of the game because as I've been thinking about more and more, any meta protocol or, anything Bitcoin based that doesn't allow for greater transaction speed and ability to actually have apps interoperate with each other is not going to succeed in bringing about the kind of change that we all want on Bitcoin. And what I mean about that is this: if you're going to have deep liquidity, the only way to get deep liquidity is to have lots of different ways to pull liquidity from different apps and to be able to do that in a very quick way where you're able to kind of have a chain reaction, right? So I'm on essentially Aave on Ethereum, right? And when someone makes a request to pull liquidity, to take out a loan on Aave, it's not from Aave. It's from many different lending liquidity sources, right? And so that's what people have to understand here is it's not enough to just, I saw this, and to be fair, this is a while ago and none of these products have actually come close to being produced and who knows if they actually exist. But, there were a lot of discussions about meta protocols that were going to add, execution on Bitcoin, but they were going to add it, they were still going to be slow, right? And that was like a value of theirs because they were going to not take any new trust assumptions ever on any side of the equation, right? Well, the reality is that if you do that, then it doesn't actually unlock any of this liquidity because you can't tap into it across different sources. Speed, do you want to? I don't know if you have anything to add to that, or if I got it right,
Yeah, I mean,
if you think that's bullshit, but that's kind of
if
my
especially if you
perspective.
just think about fungibles and trading, if you have slow transactions, the slippage can become extremely wide by the when you actually place your trade and when the trade actually goes through. And as a result, you're going to get a lot of failed transactions. So if you just look at, like, say, the order book of any Solana meme token, on Dex Screener, there's tons of trades occurring. Well, if ultimately you're settling it every 10 minutes and you put a 5% slippage in, and when you bought right off the bat it's up 20% since then, you're going to have a failed transaction even though you got it at a good price. And so you need some sort of mechanism that can instantly settle these and reflect to the other traders that that's now the current price. And there's a lot of people trying to work on that, but ultimately it doesn't work very well on layer 1 Bitcoin. And so, to be honest, I mean, are down bad and everybody's down, compared to where they were recently. But ultimately, it's probably good that we have. I mean, right now, based on the current framework and infrastructure, it'd be very difficult to produce enough volume with the current infrastructure we have. And I think, we're going to see that change dramatically over the coming weeks and months, that we can truly trade fungibles like they're supposed to be traded. And speed is one of those major factors when it comes to what's going to attract somebody. Because again, if someone's looking for an arbitrage trade opportunity, you can't wait 10 minutes because it might be closed. There's no arbitrage there. It's gone. And that's the problem when we're dealing with these slower block times.
Everyone does seem to love their speed here.
It's true. Drink a bunch of caffeine, drink a coffee, and then wash it down with Red Bull. But we also got good things,
I
man.
just got cut off at my local Starbucks.
Good, dude. That's like the only way to drive at Starbucks. It's like very aggressive and like fast and sugar
No, I think
crashy.
he got cut off, meaning he had too much. Is that what you're
Yeah,
saying,
they cut
Sway?
me off. Said you can't just
Oh
buy this.
Most
shit,
of the time it's
bro.
alcohol, but
She said you can't buy
Man,
this for the flavor.
man got cut off at Starbucks. They cut me off with
Yeah,
sugar.
the
Dude, one time,
pistachio one pump with like a little splash of oat milk. Ooh,
bro, that
baby.
shit sounds fucking
No,
like pumpkin spice Ugg boot weather.
I've just
But
redefined my speed consumption to a healthier option.
yeah, just start main veining it, bro. No, dude, one time I was at Starbucks and I was like putting sugar in my coffee, and this dude looks over to me. He's like, is that like a joke for someone else? I was like, fuck, dude. Like, um, it was embarrassing. I'm not like a dark
Yo, yeah,
like
all right, I got alpha for you. Sorry, Speed Racer did just spit some major facts. It broke my brain for a sec there. But I found out wearing these Ray-Ban Meta sunglasses, if you ever feel the need to just like comment on society out in the world, you can just like start talking, and if anyone says anything, you're like, "Yo, I'm on the phone," and you point to your glasses.
Isn't that like what the AirBuds were for? Like Apple, you just always have those in. And
Yeah, I used to
talk
always
to
have them
everybody?
in just so I could be, and I wouldn't play music.
Well, you're one of those. Weird, bro. At least play some music. But good
I'm
things,
not
bro.
autistic though, according to my psychiatrist.
Oh, dude. Well, I
I
need to go to
digress. I
her.
gotta go into the weed store. I love
I
you.
need to go to her. Mine says like I'm on some type of deep spectrum, but good things, bro. It's been a while. How you been, dude?
Yo, I'm doing good. I don't know what Swag was talking about there, but I'm doing fantastic now that I've heard that.
Yeah, same. It's sometimes just words put together
Yeah,
in a weird
we're
way.
putting out this self-deprecation just so everyone can feel better about their selves. So I'll
Wow.
be here all the rest of my life.
Those are
Much love, Swag. Much love. No, I mean it's great to be with you guys. You guys run an awesome spaces. Excited to hear about developments on Arch and other developments within like the Bitcoin DeFi ecosystem. Also a fan of Speed Racer to be clear. But yeah, I mean, I think we're still in this really exciting early days for the Bitcoin ecosystem. Like, I think about it every day. Some days reflect on it more than others, but like we're in this crazy period for crypto where you've got like multiple ecosystems. We're in the middle of like a historic bull run, and you've got like more ecosystems than we've ever had in the history of crypto. Like in 2017, we had the Ethereum ecosystem. There were other layer ones, there were other things happening, but really it was just like all eyes were on the ecosystem of Ethereum. And then, we got into DeFi summer, we got into NFTs. But those were all mainly focused around like a few chains, right? Ethereum, Solana. And now, we're in this phase where we have a burgeoning ecosystem under like the king, Bitcoin. And still so few people really understand what's happening here. There's so few people understand like the value that's being accrued here. And I think it just speaks to like, everybody on stage, everybody in the audience, everybody who's been collecting ordinals, runes, BRC20, all of it. Like, you are on the frontier of frontiers, and it's just really an exciting place to be. And I think we're gonna see some amazing shit this year.
Dude, I could not agree more. You made a really good point about last bull run. Ethereum really was kind of the lifeblood, a lot of attention, a lot of the volume, everything was kind of occurring there for the most part. But now, like, I can't help but think that not only did Bitcoin remain supreme by several multiples and no one really even came close to the market cap, with now, with Trump going in and the word Bitcoin, just being so branded, so much attention around it, and now there's so much to do on it. And I can't help but see a world where this shit goes turbo and all of the attention starts going back to some of these projects and provenance, to the ordinal collections, the runes. There's just so much history and kind of really cool things that have occurred here, which typically it's kind of difficult to do in an ecosystem because it's almost kind of like, fabricated teams doing this, that, or the other. But like a lot of people came here with like just the interest of building on Bitcoin, and that alone made a sustainable ecosystem. So it's not if, it's like when this market like really gets that big turn. And I assume the next 2 weeks is going to be really interesting. Just with the inauguration, Ross being freed, a lot more discussions, and then Trump, like if he gets one good like ego stroke on like something about Bitcoin going up and he talks about it, like that man can go on repeat. Like he can say the same thing a million times. And
Dude, they're gonna throw him a crypto ball at his inauguration. Like,
wait,
I mean,
what is that?
yeah.
Like
They're
wait,
actually they're
explain
gonna
that.
alley oop it to him. They're doing like one of those
That's how I heard it.
No,
yeah,
like
it's
like
I
kind
a
of
heard
like
like
a like a
orange balls
fucking
getting thrown
yeah,
at him, like an
halftime at
orange
like
the
basket.
like
at the
like
Wizards
Isn't it
game.
Friday? I think it's this week.
It's unclear. It's like unclear. So there's like a few different crypto ball events, is my understanding. So there's like David Sachs has like a special like invite only VIP thing that's like $100,000, and then there's like David Bailey's thing this Friday, which is like cheaper. I think that was like 2,500.
It's
Now it's
like
like
it's
five
like
grand.
90.
I think there's like a handful of things, and then maybe there's going to be another thing like on inauguration day, because I think the Sachs party and the crypto ball, the Bitcoin magazine crypto ball, David Bailey's crypto ball is on Friday. But yeah, it's like a little like unclear. There's like a bunch of shit happening
Dude,
in DC.
I'm so out of the loop. I literally thought you were like they were gonna throw him a ball like on stage.
Trump is not going to be at David Bailey's. It's unclear if David Sachs is going to be at David Bailey's, but I think there's some coordination around like David Sachs, like whatever. It's like the crypto Illuminati are going to be in DC this weekend, and there's going to be parties.
Damn, dude, I need to throw a ball. Discount $90K a ticket. We actually do throw balls at people on stage, and I think it could be quite the
Is
event.
Sexy Sax Man gonna be there?
The
I love him.
that guy.
David Sachs. Are you talking about David Sachs, the love of my life?
Oh wow.
Well,
I
the
hope
one
so.
thing people
Yeah, it was a
haven't
bad joke,
discussed,
my
and
bad.
this has already been drafted, and we're just talking about Bitcoin, price action as a whole. Is there is a draft out there where Trump could sign the strategic Bitcoin reserve via an executive order based on a law that came to pass in the financial crisis, talking about exchange stabilization. And that's been chucked around. I'll post it to the top, but that is one thing that people haven't accounted for. I think a lot of people have thought that the money, that we currently have in custody is going to be brought in on day one. That can easily be done. But if ultimately some things like this happen, some of these uncertainties, like Bunzy's mentioning, this whole ecosystem, is going to go crazy from the price action side. And just think the amount of eyes on it. And we're talking international eyes. And that initially it starts at price, but then ultimately, if under the surface all of this other stuff is starting to happen, and people starting to recognize and wake up to this kind of booming ecosystem, it could really explode this whole market.
Yeah, I
I
was
certainly
also
think
hearing about like on social media, I saw that Meta, the board actually officially recommended that some of the cash reserves of Meta or Facebook should be buying Bitcoin, and actually Zuckerberg himself made a strong support to that, and it would be to hedge against the devaluation of the dollar. So I think that's pretty fucking strong narrative right there.
Dude, Zuckerberg is just like drank a bunch of lean and is like getting kind of cool all of a sudden, or what happened, dude? Now he's like all about open source, and now he's buying Bitcoin. I mean, he's got like chains in his videos now. Like his new,
Yeah, you buy one pair of Miri jeans.
it was
He's
the
going to be at
jeans
the
that did it.
inauguration. He's going to be sitting behind Trump at the
Yeah,
inauguration.
he's been
It was
collabing
announced
with
today.
Mike Amiri.
Did you watch the Joe Rogan interview too? Like he was starting to throw some people on it. He was like, "Yeah, man, they fucking told me to take it down." It's like, I don't know, bro. But Zuck's on kind of this new little narrative that I don't know. How do we feel about it? Is Zuck cool again?
It's called getting in line, dude. Like you could, I
Everyone
mean, you
gets it at
could
the
you
price
could
they deserve.
it's
Dog.
go
the
back.
ring.
Yeah, dude, you go back to like 2016 Trump, and he was threatening to throw this motherfucker in jail, and he's looking like a sad wet dog testifying before Congress, and yeah, he grew his hair out a little bit, got a chain and a sweater, and is like yeah, like
Dude's
I'm
about to
down.
drop
It
a
all
big
started with
tape,
the Fourth
dude.
of July post, him with the
Yeah, he
beer
dropped
and
a
the
big
American
Oh, it
flag. That
is
changed
dude.
it.
That's dude. He was like, "Damn, bro, I am cool. Look at that shit." And then he just started feeling himself, bro. That is
I
like,
think it's when he started training UFC. Like I think it's awfully ironic that UFC is now becoming one of like the connective tissue of this new political and PC movement. We got Elon, we got Trump, we got obviously Dana and all those guys, but it's just so funny and ironic.
It's like the backlash to the PC movement. I feel like it's like the anti woke, like gender roles are back. Like okay, like Zuckerberg is now becoming like he was like DNC captured like totally, and like now he's like becoming like a little based.
I'm gonna
Dana
go.
White is now on the board of Facebook. He just got nominated to the board of Facebook here the
Oh
other
my
day.
god.
who's that?
Dana White.
Oh my god, bro. It is like you just go. It's ego. It's always been ego, but now it's just like front and center. But Jesus Christ, dude, this is super interesting. I think if Meta starts to get vocal about it as well, buying what was it? I think I saw that post as well. Something about like 90 billion, or I don't know. I
I
don't
thought it
know.
was 180 billion.
All it takes is one. And again, this
Jesus
is this is
Christ.
why that Trump speech at Bitcoin Nashville was so important. He said it out loud. And as soon as you have somebody in power say it out loud that we're going to put Bitcoin on our strategic reserve, everybody else is going to start doing it. And
Well,
so
he didn't say it.
regardless if it happens or not this year in the US, we will do it next year. We will be forced to because everybody else will. If ultimately only a couple countries have complete control of a commodity, i.e. oil in the Middle East, they have a lot of power when it comes to international stuff. And I think, it's one of those situations that other countries are following suit. And the same thing will happen from the company perspective. If you have one of these major, companies, put their stamp of approval that this is actually going to happen, and they're going to put, some of their free cash flow, which they all just print tons of free cash onto their balance sheet, they're all going to follow suit because they can see based on previous price action of stocks that people bid that up. You think about all this degens who trade stocks, they say, oh, they've got Bitcoin on their balance sheet. We're going to buy them because now it's going to be an alt Bitcoin asset. So it's one of those situations. All it takes is one. And once it happens, the snowball effect is immense.
Yeah.
One thing to just I mean, I agree with all of that on the institutional side, but I do think on the Bitcoin native asset side, Bitcoin spot going up does not necessarily make Bitcoin native assets go up, right? I mean, that's what we learned in the past 6 months. That was the lesson. We need retail to get in. That's what we actually need. If we want Bitcoin native assets, ordinals, runes, all of these fun games that we like to play to go up, retail's got to come in, right? MicroStrategy is not buying our bags. Governments are not buying our bags. So I just always like to ask people to think about what is that catalyst? Because Bitcoin being bought up by governments and institutions could actually crush ordinals ultimately, right? And I think in Bitcoin denominated terms, obviously.
I agree with everything about that except it crushing it, because if the
In
underlying
Bitcoin denominated terms.
Yeah, it could go
Because
up in
who
US
gives a
dollar,
fuck
but
about
down in Bitcoin.
dollars? Who gives a fuck about dollars? I don't give a
So
fuck about dollars. I
So
want more Bitcoin.
ZK had a Discord this afternoon. I don't know if other people were in on that, but he was spitting fire as well with this, and I think a lot of people believe this. But I mean, from digital art perspective, Ordinals is bar none, way better hard asset than any other protocol. If in fact we call these NFTs are going to take off, and like he mentioned, he said all it takes is one or two major buyers to come in with 10, 20, 30 million dollars of
Yeah, you just
speculative
need that
money,
people sale, dude.
just
That's all you
basically to
need.
say like, hey, I'm legitimizing this asset as a digital thing. And if you think it's happened on other cycles, we saw it in 2017 on ETH, and so it kind of had their stamp of approval. But if you're going to really get serious collectors into a marketplace, that is, you can't find a harder asset than Bitcoin, and something that can't be regulated in a sense. And so it is interesting. I do agree with you on the price action. If when you just look at altcoins in general, when Bitcoin rips, everything kind of pauses and says, "Whoa, let's watch what's happening here," and that happens, on chain as well. But I think it's one of those situations that could really change the dynamic of things when people start to recognize the distinct differences between what chains provide.
Yeah, just as a communicator who still has some friends in the quote unquote real world here and isn't just in this Bitcoin bubble, I'd say to answer Isabel's question about who gives a fuck about, USD price action, retail does, right? So if we want to stop speaking just to ourselves, I'll just tell you right now, it took forever to adjust to thinking about things in terms of oh, it's point 0.4 Bitcoin versus point 0.6, right? And it's like going to a different country and how difficult it is for a week to try to figure out exactly what your currency is and not have massive slippage because you didn't realize that you were tipping an extra $20, right? So I would just say that yes, absolutely, I'm all for everything be denominated in Bitcoin. But also, I'm curious, and this is one I want to answer for the crowd because all of you guys have talked about the values of Arch and what's exciting. But as we think about our next stage, we're not just thinking about how do we win over, the amazing people in this space and the people who've been building, but we're also thinking about the end goal here is, you know, fast programmable Bitcoin for everybody, right? And I'm curious what it is that you guys think will actually get retail excited about because I don't think that the answer. I think in the short term, the answer, of course, is to attract people from Solana, from Ethereum, things like that. But I think the really exciting opportunities, there's still so many people who are not playing at all in the programmability space. They're not even playing in crypto. And the first thing they're going to say when they join in is like, okay, let me like get some Bitcoin because that's what they know and they've heard about. And then they're gonna be like, okay, well, I've got some Bitcoin and I heard they're like apps and stuff. Oh, I have to go to Ethereum to do that. Okay, well, I guess I'll go to Ethereum. I've heard of that one too. Or I've heard of Solana Pump Fun. But if we can get to the point where we have those apps ready, then they're not going to take that extra step to go to Ethereum or Solana. They're going to stay on Bitcoin. And so I'm curious what you guys think about what's the appeal to the average person. Is like, is it Bitcoin apps? Is it, like this is the Bitcoin app
No,
Retail
it's
thing?
wants
simple.
This is
green
it's
candles.
money.
That's
Yeah.
it.
It's
Green
money, right?
candles.
It's money. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Green
this is where you
candles,
make
and they
money
come
with your
flocking.
Bitcoin. Okay. So
Yeah,
this is
no
where
one
you're
gives a
making money with
fuck, dude.
Bitcoin.
No one gives a fuck if they see a Beeple sale for $61 million or whatever, and they see an artist make whatever wash traded amount, but they see a big win. They say, oh, I could be that. And they'll flock to any narrative or any type of situation. That's why the Bitcoin narrative just makes so much sense to me. Is like anything that happens on any other chain, say it's an NFT collection. You know what's better than an NFT on Ethereum is an ordinal on Bitcoin. Therefore, that just kind of is like a gateway drug to a
Well,
much
but only
better
if you can make as
platform.
much money. Only if those stories start emerging.
Well, then let's break it down to like if these are just, materials, right? Like why would you want it on plastic when you can have it on gold? Like the narrative does it
I
explains
agree.
itself in
I
my
agree. The
opinion.
scarcity is there, and I think that like for traders and more thoughtful people, like long term trend, absolutely it trends there. I think in the short term, it's going to be hearing about someone investing in Fartcoin $16 and getting $1.5 million out of it, right? Like
Yeah.
stories like that, but actually existing on Bitcoin or really not on Bitcoin. People won't even be thinking about that. They'll be thinking, what app was it on? Oh, it's this new app that allows this. Okay, great. I'm going to go use that app.
Yeah.
I think it
That's
all depends on how people get onboarded. Are they onboarding to Bitcoin through Coinbase? Are they onboarding through like Xverse where they own their UTXOs? Or are they onboarding through, maybe an Arch network wallet where they have like a wrapped asset? Because that's going to be the determination of how they, look to do what's next.
I also think people are like highly underestimating the UX challenge, like the role of UX in all of this, and like Bitcoin getting to a place where it's just like easy to play these fun DeFi games that we theoretically want to build on the mother chain, right?
Isabel,
Like,
having run our points program, I'll just say this real quickly. Like, and part of it is because we've been on testnet 4, and part of like even getting like people who are used to Ethereum campaigns and helping them understand that like there's a difference between your taproot and your SegWit address. Oh my God, it's yeah. So
exactly.
go ahead. But I just wanted to say,
Exactly.
like,
No,
you are absolutely
exactly.
right. Even for crypto people, this is massively complicated right now.
100%. And I think that that's sort of the thing. Like, yeah, it's number go up, but it's also like ease of getting the liquidity in, right? And so, like, I mean, I just couldn't believe, these DeFi games on Solana have gotten out of control. Like, you can buy Solana with a credit card, like it's fucking nuts. I mean, and they don't give a shit that it's KYC. They don't give a shit about like the trust assumptions. They don't even know what that means. Like if we're talking about like true baby retailers, like just getting in, I think like UX is like the next most important thing after number go up, an opportunity.
The trust assumptions and the native Bitcoin experience are what's really making us stand out, and why I think, as you rightly pointed out, like people have seen us as a darling of Bitcoin, season 2. People are excited about what we're doing, and it's about, but that's what got people in initially. But it's the UX, the speed, and the difference in that I think is ultimately what makes us super exciting, and it's going to make a difference.
And Magic
My
Eden
hot
Wallet is
take.
working on that. I mean, I think that's a start, basically having something where you can have multiple different assets in one wallet so it doesn't feel different, but there's still some nuances that people need to understand about, well, you can't send Bitcoin to this wallet, but you have to send your ordinals and runes to that wallet. And so it's getting better, but we're not anywhere near where we need to be when it comes to that adoption.
My hot take is that things like being able to buy Solana with a credit card are going to ultimately make a bigger difference for the Bitcoin native assets ecosystem and the meme coin ecosystem and all of the different like crypto fund games ecosystem than like MicroStrategy buying Bitcoin will. Because when MicroStrategy buys Bitcoin, again, I know you say like they don't care about Bitcoin, they only care about dollars, but like the opportunity cost is Bitcoin. Like that's the reality. Why play these games if like just buying Bitcoin and holding it is going to beat your hand? Like there's no point, right? So the only reason to play the games is so that you can beat Bitcoin, so that you can get more Bitcoin. Bitcoin denominated wins is ultimately what matters. Yeah, and so I think, yeah, like if we want that to happen, like if we want like node monks or whatever, or any of these collections or anything to outpace Bitcoin, yeah, the beautiful thing is we don't need as much capital injection because we're smaller market cap, right? Like we don't need, a few big whales can pump up our market really hard. But ultimately, like we do need retail adoption. Like corporate adoption and government adoption doesn't directly affect our ecosystem. We need retail getting in. And in my opinion, it's things like making crypto accessible easily with credit cards that makes that happen,
I
right? Like in
That's
2020, it
already the
was
case though.
stimmy checks.
You can
Whoa, whoa.
buy Bitcoin with MoonPay. That's
yeah,
been
that's
on
exactly
But
what
Magic
I
Eden.
think.
It's been
Uh-huh.
on
again, in certain
Ordinals.
No,
jurisdictions you can't. But actually, this is one of these day one things that's going to happen. They did pass a bill where banks could custody Bitcoin, and it got vetoed by Biden, if people forget. And that is something that is going to be one of those day one things that's going to happen. And if all of a sudden banking regulation and clarity surrounding Bitcoin changes, you think about the whole group of people that can now, if most people have tried to buy, Bitcoin or Solana or anything with a credit card, you get denied. They can't, they don't allow it. And so now all of a sudden, if this goes away, when we talk about some of these easy regulatory things, it opens the door, like you're saying, Isabel. And I think it is very important. People want to interact with crypto, but we don't want to make it feel like they're interacting with crypto. Because most people don't want to know this tech stuff. They just want to come in and degen and buy something and sell something, and they just want to do it like you're doing it on any other app on your phone. And if we can get there, I think that's where the real takeoff takes place.
I agree. I think Phantom Wallet is the best example of this. Is like they took a chain and introduced frictionless. Like MetaMask was clunkier than belief. But what's cool about Bitcoin is we do have morals, and like there are people holding people accountable for making truly trustless, apps. Unlike we saw like on Wonderland and all these DAOs and these rugs on say Avalanche and all these other chains. Like we have a higher standard here, but the UX 100%. Like the other day I wanted more exposure to Solana on that dip, and I was like, I was able to swap USDC in Phantom Wallet through Wormhole to get Solana. Like that, could take some steps previously. And like I was just like, boom, done, Phantom Wallet, amazing. And
Solana,
another thing is
yeah,
like the user anxiety of some of this. Like you send a transaction and you have to wait 10 minutes to know. Like that user anxiety could diminish someone from even wanting to do it again. Like, and that's something
With
people
Bungie, you
need to
no
nailed
think
it.
about.
I can't
FDIC
tell you how
guarantee.
often.
this
We're
is
all
I can't
great.
tell
pumped.
you
We're
how
all
often I
This
pumped.
is
get
great. We're
Drink
all
nervous.
more
so excited.
caffeine.
Just real quickly, what I'd say is that Solana experience is already, pretty great and, definitely improving. Just the other day, like I feel like I'm pretty technically proficient, but I am a busy person who doesn't have time to dabble in stuff that's not my main job, right? And, I went to go and invest in a friend's virtual agent on virtuals with Base, right? And like I got caught in this giant wormhole of like sending the wrong Ethereum to the wrong chain, which meant that I had no gas fees once I actually got my Ethereum or got my USDC that I wanted to use on virtuals. It was a disaster. And so this is another way in which I don't even think like, I mean, I know we all talk, FUD Ethereum all the time here, but I genuinely think Ethereum is out of the game and won't be able to battle against it. Solana, the UX experience, we can, say is still pretty good. But here's the thing is that with Arch based on our VM, which is based on the accounts based model of Solana with UTXOs and adjusted to that, we're going to be able to have that Solana like experience too. So I think Solana is really the biggest competitor in terms of a UX that retail can actually adopt.
And I got to take off, but it's a great point. But and again, I think a lot of us with perspective, Ordinals is basically beginning of 2023 launched, and we can see where we're at. Solana launched in 2020. Okay, so they have a big head start when it comes to all of this stuff and be able to build, and they aren't in the kind of walls and confines of Bitcoin and what can be done and what can't be done. And so, I think people's perspective about when all this stuff launched and like, oh, instant price action on runes, day one We just didn't have that infrastructure. And so this stuff is all being built. And I think everybody in the trenches realizes it. And once it is, it does unlock that true potential. But, I think, we just need to have some framework in mind when it comes to where we are in the maturity and development of this ecosystem versus where other chains are, because we shouldn't be comparing apples to apples when ultimately they've had how many more years and different infrastructure that they have to work within.
Also, on that note, like I actually think that if Solana does really well, so, like a lot of that value accrues to Bitcoin native assets, right? Like if people are making a ton of money in meme coins on Solana, like those people are going to buy puppets. Like that's going to happen. Whereas like if MicroStrategy buys a lot of Bitcoin, the value of puppets goes down in Bitcoin denominated terms, right? So I think that that's something to like keep in mind also is like let's like drop the like PvP vibes. I feel like that's like my biggest criticism of our ecosystem lately is we're all like acting like it's a zero sum game and like, oh, my project's better than your project. It's like, bro, like if node monks start ripping, puppet's gonna follow. I promise. Like we all are in this together. Like honestly, like that's way more important. It's way more important that retail focused ecosystems win than MicroStrategy adopts Bitcoin.
Well, my project is better, just to be clear.
Yeah, that was a much more eloquent way of saying what I've been saying, I think. But I'm going to have to go back and reread these tweets.
One thing I think a lot about though is self-custodying your UTXOs. And the elephant in the room is it's just not possible for the whole world to self-custody their UTXOs on Bitcoin. To onboard the next billion people would take 10 years. So at some point you have to, one, raise the block size, but that's not going to happen.
Can
Or
you dive
two, you
into
have to
why?
have,
Why there? Just
well, there's
like,
just not enough block space to, create the number of UTXOs needed to let everyone in the world have a UTXO. So, you can say it's not a zero sum, but in a sense it is, because we can't scale to the demand. So, to onboard the next billion people to Bitcoin assets, you have to raise the block size, or you need some other scaling layer like Arch to, wrap those assets and be able to trade them at much cheaper rates. So instead of like we all own a UTXO, it's like the next billion people all share one UTXO that has 100,000 Bitcoin in it.
You mean it's not a zero sum game because like we need L2s. We need like different stuff to basically like
Well, I would
accomplish
say
our goal.
Solana is an L1. You could scale the blockchain at the L1 layer. It's just pretty politically challenging to do. It hasn't worked out too well for the people that tried. But so in lieu of that, yeah, you need these other scaling layers.
You need tech on top of
Yeah.
Bitcoin to make it work because you're absolutely right. Like there's not enough block space for not everyone is going to own Bitcoin on layer one. It's just not technically feasible, even if we educated people and people cared.
But I'm always wondering something, like why everyone wants to onboard the retail and like the end user. Because like concretely, if Michael Saylor begin to buy ordinals, it will be a very biggest and very better, I think, onboarding than onboarding the masses. Because like really it's like so fucking hard and like so fucking useless like to explain to people like, yeah, we have a postage into the ordinals and like, there is an envelope which is written with an indexer. Like, come on, like it's like just, I mean, if it's not to speak with like educated people and like useful, why the retail is important? Like the retail will just be wrecked as usual. And
NFTs are pretty much a
you know,
retail product. I mean, you're not going to come in with a fund and buy $1 trillion worth of NFTs that you can't fractionalize and sell off pieces of or whatever you need to do. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. NFTs are like trading cards. It's a retail facing product for the most part. So I don't
Yeah,
see
but
I
those
don't
are
see
still
funds coming
alternative
in buying
investment
NFTs.
assets for some. Like there are people that look at these, art and collectibles as alternative investments, but the game changes when those things are immutably proven and something that doesn't like degrade over time or have the risk
big
of,
people.
all these other things. I may have missed a part there, but just
I
wanted to
think
chime.
degrading
I think
over
there's
time
like a
is
new
one
game
thing, but
here.
the reality is if it goes down in price over time, that's worse than degradation. You want your investments to go up.
Yeah, of course.
ultimately.
But when you take on more risk, you assume that, more risk, more reward, but, risk comes with downside, obviously.
I think I kind of want to go back to something that Matt was saying because I pretty much disagreed on it with the Ethereum is done concept. It's all going to be Solana, and then maybe some of that liquidity moves into BTC. I think this is a game of rotations, and so we're already seeing base go crazy after the Solana pump fund craziness. It moved over to base, and I think the reality is like ETH is next up, and then if Bitcoin is ready, then the next rotation would then be ordinals and runes and BRC20s maybe and whatever you want to call Bitcoin assets. But Bitcoin has to be ready for that. I think the biggest point that was put on here by Bunzi and Harry is like you don't want to buy these assets and have to wait 10 minutes to if you got them or not. I think that's totally valid every single time. I mean, I've been in this space for 10 years and it still drives me crazy sitting around block explorer. Like nobody does that anymore. Nobody wants to do that or has to do that on these other chains. It's a huge user experience upgrade that they have, and I think that this is something that Arch could provide. Whereas if the rotation time is basically Solana got oversubscribed, so we moved on to base. Now if base gets oversubscribed or whatever you want to call it, there's too much money in it and people want to rotate to the next new thing. If Arch is able to capture that, then Arch would be that thing that captures retail. I think it's just a matter of having the infrastructure ready and like being capable of capturing that attention, and when the liquidity comes in, managing all those transactions, because currently it's like whenever all the liquidity comes into Bitcoin, the network itself stops the momentum, and that cannot happen if you want to have success like Solana has had.
Randy, question for you. Like your thoughts. So I share those frustrations too, obviously. Well, some of that has been, some of that, stress of buying something that I want to confirm, has been downplayed by like the stuff in the advancements in Magic Eden's technology and the stuff they're doing to make sure that, when you click buy, it's going to actually end up in your wallet. What other ways can we actually address that issue? Is there a way to
In my opinion, it's UX, dude. It's simply like
how would those
Well,
offers
you
change
can have
I know that's not from like a trading perspective, like runes may be different, but the offer setting and that new functionality.
if you want it on layer
Yeah.
1, you have to get opcodes. You can get opcat, and if you have opcat alone, you can do it.
Okay, so
Instead of
Opcat's the
sniping, I think.
solution,
I'm pretty sure.
and then everything else is just a band-aid right now.
Or you just move it over to Arch. I mean, all you can put Bitcoin itself on something like Arch Network. So like you could, so there's definitely two feasible options. One is you move it to a new layer, new network like Arch, or the other one is you enable some more of these developer friendly opcodes, and then you can have safer trading. I mean, these guys, these BTC developers, it's crazy. Like you don't like it, that's one thing. But to try to pretend like it doesn't exist is an entirely other thing. That's crazy people stuff. This stuff exists, and if you want them to have a good and safe experience, you just enable the opcode, and it doesn't hurt you at all to do it.
But after we can use Rust, huh? Like to build on Bitcoin. Like the cohort of like Chaincode Labs are using like mainly Rust, and like it's really I think the standard today for Bitcoin.
Yeah, that's what we use as well, man. Yeah, I tend to agree with what was said. I think what's truly addictive about a new ecosystem. He called it a new narrative or rotation or whatever. Is you need to have like this super dynamic and fluid ability of your capital to rotate within that ecosystem, even. And that's something that Solana is really good at because they have all this cross-program composability so that you could have leverage, you could have liquidations and flash loans, flash bots. You have all these different things all like seamlessly connected. And I think that's what's ultimately going to be that big like unlock for, Bitcoin fungibles specifically, is we need that fluid dynamic so that capital can flow throughout the ecosystem. And right now, not only is it slow, but it's also kind of fraught with other types of user experience issues. So we may be able to get to a point where, yeah, it's trustless and we can build trustless apps, but it's still going to be 10 minutes, with Bitcoin blocks, and it's never going to be quite that fluid dynamic without inserting a VM, a global state machine, into the Bitcoin
Yeah, but I
ecosystem.
think I think you can band-aid that with UX. If you know that things aren't going to get sniped in the mempool, then if I know that for a fact, I can just throw that asset into the front end of your wallet right away, and then the amount of time it takes to confirm doesn't really matter unless you're trying to trade it really quickly,
I agree with that
which is important as
100%, dude.
well. But
Like user
I think
anxiety is
there is improvements you get with
But you still
Opcat
don't
all day
get the
long.
composability about that whole thing about cross program. Like there's not going to be a way where you can call a smart contract inside of another smart contract using opcodes on Bitcoin. So if you want that
Right.
ability to do leverage like you see on Aave and how it proliferated through the entire Ethereum DeFi ecosystem, and how that really played a part in the DeFi summer of 2020. Like this is a catalyst. Catalyst is leverage. Catalyst is liquidations. Like you need a catalyst for that capital to move throughout the ecosystem, and then you also need that ecosystem to be integrated and composable so that it flows very, very quickly and fast. So I think that it's entirely possible that we achieve some level of trustless peer-to-peer transactions. But if we want fungibles like meme coins or even utility and governance tokens to get to a level like we see them on other ecosystems, like we compare them to be, like we all talk about that, oh well, there's 30 coins on Solana that are over 30 million market cap and Bitcoin has two. Like we have to consider the dynamics that they have and we don't. So if we want that to be a reality, then we have to actually embrace whatever the most reasonable implementation to get that end result. And I think that the Ordinal Wallets guys are doing a phenomenal job carrying that torch, creating the APL token standard so that we can create more efficient and dynamic fungible tokens that don't necessarily, start from the red because we're paying miners and doing this whole minting and scribing thing in its current form.
So Matt, this is something I've thought a lot about with the runes and the work that Saturn's done. I think it's really cool that Arch can make these AMMs and it like improves the runes experience. But in a lot of ways, I still think it's pretty deficient in that like if it got crazy adoption, there's still this 25 chain transaction limit. So you still kind of have to rely on settlement when there's like a lot of volume. And I'm just like a little uncertain on how those can still be interoperable with like other, contracts like lending platforms or perps or whatever that people build on Arch. So I'm just like curious, do you think like this APL stuff will like just kind of take over the runes, or are people gonna like wrap their runes as APLs? How do you think that goes? Or is it really just still gonna be this we settle on chain every time you do a runes transaction?
I think it's really interesting you bring that up. I mean, obviously, we're developing the standard not just for Arch, but for all of Bitcoin to be used, and that's the bull case for it. We hope to see that, but I don't necessarily think the people are ready for that just yet. We gotta save
Yeah,
runes
yeah.
first before we talk about third standard. But there
Hmm.
are some really really cool things that we can do with that, as you know. But I think though, for your point about the 25 chain transaction limit, first of all, that's a mempool policy thing. That's not necessarily a Bitcoin consensus thing.
Yeah, it's not
So
consensus. That's right.
yeah, so I can tell you for sure right now, just to kind of give you an idea on how far ahead Amin is thinking here, is we're working directly with Mempool Space to be a platinum sponsor for them. So we are working hand in hand on creating sort of a non-standard transaction type, and Bitcoin miners are going to be able to opt into to contributing a certain amount of their hash to these non-standard transactions, and that would basically allow us to bypass the 25 chain transaction limit of the mempool policy. So we could
Are you
get
guys
it.
trying to get like merged into core?
It's not necessarily merge into core. It's basically allowing miners to opt into additional revenues like potential by bypassing some
Yeah,
of this mempool policy. So we're working on that
interesting.
with mempool space right now, and then of course about some of this like mempool sharding things that are not mempool. I'm sorry, state like sharding that we're doing as well, where we can actually take a liquidity pool and shard it into 50 different state.
UTXOs
Yeah,
or whatever.
exactly.
Yeah.
So you can get a factor of 50 more, as far as like throughput for the block. So different
It
things
certainly
like
makes
that.
like routing challenging though, right? To have to like manage all these UTXOs and implement all that logic. I definitely see it could be done, but it's just challenging.
But that's exactly why Saturn isn't working right now. Frankly, is because this is such a like experimental thing that is constantly having to be iterated on and fixing bugs for the rollback mechanism and things that happen as a result of this efficiency and how fast we're moving. That's really a function of just how innovative it is. So it takes time to fix, and when it's finally finished, I think that it'll be clear that the user experience is much better than other implementations out there.
Yeah.
Also, I'll,
Yeah. I
I'll
mean, my
highlight
my
that
take is like,
a means like experience in the banking industry is actually pretty helpful in the whole rollback mechanic. I guess that's something that's pretty prevalent in the banking sector from a technical side.
oh, like chargebacks and
Yeah, rollback
yeah.
mechanisms or something. I don't know.
My take is that a lot of these Bitcoin assets will end up being like wrapped. So they'll be in a UTXO on, but it's like a Arch program smart contract, and then we'll trade them using APL or some other wrapper. And then whenever you want to settle back, you'll just come back to the native asset. So that would work for native BTC, but also runes and BRC20s and whatnot.
Yeah, exactly. I think if you think about how Stacks works, it's much similar. They have their SIP10 tokens where you're bridging things, except they haven't quite yet gotten to the point, or maybe Bitflow and who did the Pontus bridge, so you can do the bridging of runes to stacks and stuff. So there is similar implementations where you can wrap Bitcoin assets and make them more tradable or fungible, speedier, that kind of stuff. So that's definitely the outcome that we're betting on.
Yeah, then it's like a situation where you're trading Ordi for dog go to the moon. They can interop, whereas like with the Saturn approach, you still couldn't do that.
Yeah, Saturn made the choice of being like a more native application, right? They wanted to
Yeah.
be, like a native Bitcoin experience where takers of the liquidity of swappers are just signing PSBTs and don't have to bridge. That was an intentional design choice. But there's going to be other AMMs on Arch where both participants can technically be, wrapped or bridged into the system and having a Solana type experience.
Yeah, very cool. I mean, I appreciate all the work Saturn's done. I think it makes a lot of sense why they did it, but I'm just like envisioning all the next three steps. We're actually just going to skip that. Like people are going to want to skip that and just like rip transactions as fast as possible and not have to wait, and then settle back whenever they feel comfortable. Like then you made your bag. Okay, I can turn my wrap Arch Bitcoin into real Bitcoin and hold it in my X first or whatever.
I mean, yeah, that's kind of how DotSwap currently is for the liquidity providing, right? You just deposit your funds into their multi-sig, you do your liquidity providing, you watch your fees kind of stack up, and then whenever you want, you just kind of withdraw. So it's fairly similar to that. And it's not so different from other like Ethereum and Solana ecosystems where if you're LPing in Uniswap, it's not like you get to hold on to your ERC20 tokens in your Ethereum. You're putting that into the Uniswap smart contract controlled wallet. So you just have you have the ability, because you trust Ethereum validators, of course, to like give you your money back whenever you want to unstake or withdraw your LP. So I think that's a reasonable experience to expect. Like Pups Fund is also built the same way. We're going to be launching some new information about the Pups Fund website pretty soon, but it's like such a fast-paced degen game that it's just impossible to do it the Saturn way, where we can wait for block confirmations, because you're going to have people that have won and lost money before 10 times before the block's even cleared. So the only way to reasonably do it is you have to kind of bridge it into the ecosystem, and then you can leave whenever you want with your winnings or losings or whatever.
That's super interesting. I didn't even consider the 25 chain UTXO situation. This kind of shows how deep Harry is into exploring this. That's good stuff
Yeah, I
because
know quite a bit about the actual implementation and why it is that way. It's like this non-performant data structure within the Bitcoin core code. that's like big O n squared, so it just doesn't scale very well. I think it uses like a lot more compute and memory if you increase that limit. So like the BSV team spent many months like refactoring the code to get rid of that limit. I remember, man, that was back in 2020, I think. But it was such a huge that was a problem on BSV for so long, and then they finally fixed it. They gave us infinite, and it really helped a lot of the developers.
Yeah, like how big did that open up the possibilities? Like
Well,
whether
yeah, I mean, you would be posting on Twitch. So we had a social network that was all on chain, and you would post and then like and then retweet and do stuff 25 times, and then you'd be stuck.
I
So
see.
for us, it let us, you were able, and like I could fix it with better UTXO management, but it's also still kind of a challenging thing to work through.
Mhm.
And it was just far easier to chain the transactions and they can get settled whenever.
Interesting. No, that's dude, this is gonna be exciting stuff, especially just knowing how many like builders this is attracting, like, and the problem that it solves because yeah, man, a lot of this stuff people were saying, building a DEX, this is a DEX. It's like, dude, this is you forget what the D stands for. Like most people are doing these trust like centralized approaches and they're still calling them DEXs, which is hindering a lot of true liquidity to be provided because for deep liquidity to truly accrue, like these people need to know their millions of dollars are safe. Like if they're going to provide and be the makers of some of these pools, like there's no way that they're just going to be like the trust me bro model is going to work. So, I mean, once this
I think on the flip side, it also matters a lot for operators and builders. Like, we've had cases where we had to pay people back because they bought a fake, BRC20 token. This is like, something that would keep me up at night in the past. So there's a lot of risk as builders and, operators to provide accurate services. So
yeah,
just having even the trust assumption is good for the builders. So you're not like
and from a custodial
worried.
standpoint, like, dude, some of these people that like
Yeah.
have these keys, like if you're in the US and you are custody, like, and you run these pools, like GG's, bro, you're done for. Like that is just not something you really want to be a part of just from all the legal standpoint. So man, I mean, the timing is just amazing too, with ordinals, kind of the way the macros playing out with the political landscape. I mean, we have some turbo ass president that's super bullish on Bitcoin and, all of these kind of running into each other. Like, if this isn't the catalyst for like a big upswing, but I'm just curious of like how much of it's priced in. I don't have the best outlook and like optics on all of that, but like my gut's just saying like so much higher. Like, and I can't really picture it not happening, but this is
The
definitely
signal that I'm
financial
looking
advice.
for is whether or not this is a grift or not, is whether or not day one Ross gets freed. Like this is, I don't think
Wow,
it
fair
matters all
enough.
that much, but it is a symbolic
I
thing
can see that.
where
Yeah,
if he doesn't do it, then
I
um
can back that.
it's
I
yeah.
can see where you're going with that 100% because, like, I mean, politicians say whatever that needs to be said in the moment to appease whoever's directly in front of them to follow whatever they like, whatever complements their agenda. So like that is an interest. I haven't thought about that, and that's definitely a possibility. What was so it was like I actually wrote a remix to Violetta's song, and I like put that part of Trump's speech is like, and on day one, I will free Ross Ulbricht, and like so, is that still what everyone's expecting? Is day one of his indict or whatever it's called? Is that still on the table, or was like anything else discussed that I've missed, or something like this? Does anyone know, or is that still what everyone's expecting?
I was in the room. He said it to me,
He
so
said it.
he
He
better.
looked at me in the eyes, dude, and I threw him a ball, and like he did catch it. But yo, Lord, you had your hand up earlier. I want to make sure if you had. Sorry, we were just people were just
Oh, BJ,
spitting
BJ. No, you're
fire.
fine. I get it. You're spitting hardcore. Yeah, I want to talk about the UI thing actually. I came from like Ethereum originally, right? And then I came to Bitcoin day one, but I'm kind of a fucking nerd. So it was like pretty easy to deal with the bullshit we had to deal with. I still think it's very difficult for like people who are on other chains to like come to Bitcoin and have a good experience. I understand it and I understand the mempool, and I think it's fine that like other wallets on other chains, they just like go to like Etherscan or like SoulScan whenever you do a transaction, but it's so fast that it like doesn't matter.
And I feel like most people don't care. Like I didn't look at an Etherscan for a long time, for instance, right? Like I just didn't have to because it was so fast on ETH when I got here. But like Bitcoin being slow, I think there's a better way to do like UI, right? Like where like in wallet, say like you make a purchase in the wallet, instead of like throwing you to the mempool, there's like a loading screen that's like, okay, your purchase is in this part, and now it's in this part, and now it's in your wallet. And like even if that takes 10 minutes, like a well done UI experience is like better than just sending somebody to the mempool, right? So like that's my opinion on it overall. Is I just think like it needs to look better and easier to use for other people to just come here and understand what's happening. I think we can do a better job on that, just like
Yeah.
builders in general. I think it's bullish though. And I think there's like hella improvement. Like I was on here on a Unisat wallet, had no idea what I was doing. So like I think it's way better than it used to be. So like shout out to all the builders, but
Yeah.
I do think that like we can make it easier for people who have no idea
No,
what's happening,
I
right?
I agree with that 100%. And like something as simple as a loading state with that like shows that it's actually loading and people aren't accidentally refreshing pages and kind of losing some of the state that is needed. And like Unisat, one big improvement is like when they started indexing the mempool relatively quickly and just saying, "Hey, here's your transaction. It's still unconfirmed, but here it is in your wallet." Like I think that's such an undervalued and underexplored thing because from the engineer standpoint, like the com- the computers are puting, everything's good. But from the user standpoint, is like you need that peace of mind to ensure and that person to do more activity. Because if there's that, like, we've all had this feeling, and if you haven't, man, like teach me your ways. But like sending a transaction and something happening and you feel like it's lost. Like there's no other feeling that just like can hinder more interactions than that. And that's unfortunately super common, especially in the Bitcoin ecosystem with the longer time. So I think just introducing like UX and like Randy is someone that I think does this really well with his UX design is just like, updating the user of like, hey, this is what's happening and being more like live time. It could just be like giving a message like and making it like light of it. Be like, yeah, it's swimming in the mempool and then it changing to something else or something just to know that like what is happening is being documented and kind of updated to the user. I think apps that like do this, and that's why Arch too. It's fast by nature. So like that is something that I think unlocks a lot of people doing more transactions when they feel extremely confident and comfortable with the applications and like wallets that they're using. So like I'm bullish on because I've been interacting with Arch and it's just so fast that it just makes you feel like warm and fuzzy inside. I know that's like the worst way to explain it, but I do think that allows people to make more transactions. But we are rounding off here and just kind of want to thank everyone that came through, chatted. Isabel, I think Matt said it well. I think like, definitely a way better co-host than Farmer Joe. Just like Farmer Joe's a little like he's cute, but no, but it was great to have you on and everyone else. I mean, Randy, but this has been a fun show. So are you gonna call out Farmer Joe? I want to see some beef on the timeline.
I love
Yeah,
Farmer
fuck
Joe
Farmer Joe,
so
bro.
much.
I know he's the best.
He's the fucking best. He's so good. What a pumpkin.
What a pumpkin. Damn. Dude, this is recorded. I'm clipping that. Farmer Joe is a pumpkin in a sweater. Dude, I have the funniest stories. Okay. I'll digress. But if anyone else has anything else they want to mention or that you want to double click on, but if not, buckle up. I think the next 2 weeks are going to be very interesting. I think Bitcoin's going to be dominating the timeline outside of crypto Twitter with, all the political landscape, Ross being freed. We have all the cypherpunks. And I think that narrative is going to really activate and kind of give a big morale shift for like the really true deep Bitcoiners. Ross being freed is a very big deal. And I'm excited to see what that does for collections like OMB and some of these other like, more art culture driven projects that kind of resonate with that. But yeah, anyone else? Matt, Randy, Speed, Isabel, Lord, appreciate you. Here's this remix actually I wrote for that I was talking about. And speaking of music, I got something to unveil here pretty soon. I think Isabel was putting some clues together yesterday, but yeah, we'll see you guys Thursday. And here's a remix I wrote for Violetta. I know crazy, baby.
feel just know that
control.
And if you vote for me on day one, I will commute the sentence of Ross Ulbricht.